First, it was the investigation into the sexual abuse of underage girls that allowed a large network of paedophiles to operate in plain sight for years.
One of those girls was 15-year-old Victoria Agoglia. It's emerged social workers knew that she was being raped and forcibly injected with heroin. They failed to help her and she died just 2 months later. Tonight, Greater Manchester Police and Manchester Social Services are apologising for their failures. Their investigation, codenamed Augusta, was closed in 2005, despite dozens of girls giving evidence about abuse by mainly Asian men.
Tonight, Rob Smith is live for us at GMP headquarters, where the force has been responding, and we'll hear from the former Chief Crown Prosecutor for our region.
But first, our correspondent Elaine Willcox looks at the failures and how the death of a teenager could have stopped the grooming gangs in their tracks.
Victoria Agoglia's death exposed a network of paedophiles abusing children in care. The teenager died 16 years ago, but that abuse was never investigated until now. Her grandmother told me the police and social workers knew she was being raped and passed around by Asian men, and nothing was done.
All these years, nobody had given me an answer. Nobody. But they knew all about this. They knew the exploitations that were given. They knew what these fellas were doing to her. They just didn't care.
Today's review of Operation Augusta said 97 potential suspects were identified, but it was closed down, blaming a lack of resources and a fear it would stir up racial tensions, allowing the abuse to continue unchecked. Victoria's family never gave up, and in 2014 the then Chief Constable Sir Peter Fahy said he would consider a review of her case.
I'm quite happy to consider that, and clearly there's quite a number of historic cases that we are investigating.
Despite all the promises, this report shows that review of Victoria's and all the other cases didn't happen. It spells out how the police and social services knew children were being subjected to profound abuse, and nothing was done to stop their abusers. Even now, Greater Manchester's Mayor said the police's cooperation in this report should have happened far sooner.
We're talking about children here, sexual abuse of children, rape of children. I mean, how can that not, in anyone's understanding, be at the very top of the list when it comes to what should be prioritised?
People will be shocked by the police failures, and in the report it said a serving officer may have been involved in this abuse. Will you now push for criminal prosecutions?
The police should go wherever the evidence takes them. And any perpetrator out there who has been in any way associated with these events in the past, I hope they're feeling worried today.
This review was ordered by the Mayor after a former detective turned whistleblower, Maggie Oliver, said victims were still being failed.
Those men who were raping children back in 2004 and 5 have not stopped abusing children. For me, that's what this has all been about. It's been fighting to have a public acknowledgement and then action. Those at the top of the police, of social services, need to be held accountable when they have deliberately failed in their duty.
Few in this room could fail to be moved by this grandmother's appeals for help.
None of them listened to me. They never said they were sorry.
Those involved in this report say its findings can no longer be ignored in the way the victims, like Victoria, were for so long. Elaine Willcox, ITV News, Manchester.
Well, we can cross now to Rob Smith, who is at GMP's headquarters for us in Manchester. Rob, some very tough questions for the police to answer tonight. How are they responding?
Yeah, so many tough questions, in fact, that the senior officer who was meant to give a statement to the media here today was swapped out for the person in charge, the Chief Constable Ian Hopkins. He said he realised back in 2018 that Operation Augusta had not been to the standard expected. He said a new investigation with its own code name, Operation Green Jacket, is trying to bring justice where there was none before you've already heard about those people questioned over Victoria's death. And in total, that new investigation has identified 53 potential victims, and in 38 of those cases, lines of inquiry, as police put it, basically leads that detectives can follow up. Behind all those numbers, it's important to stress there are people who've had their lives ruined by paedophiles, people the police failed, people the Chief Constable spoke directly to.
I want to apologise to all of those vulnerable children who were let down in 2004 when Greater Manchester Police did not thoroughly investigate the abhorrent offences that had been committed against them. I want to say that I'm personally disgusted that these children were not cared for and the awful abuse they suffered. I'm committed to doing all that we can to ensure that they receive the justice today that they were denied 15 years ago.
And Rob, we heard in Elaine's report there that the former GMP detective Maggie Oliver says the police have tried to cover up their failings. What did they say to that?
Well, I didn't get to ask the Chief Constable, nor did any reporter, about that. He didn't take any questions. The Assistant Chief Mabs Hussain did speak to the media off camera, and I questioned him at length about those allegations of a cover-up. He insisted there was no such thing. The force committed to protecting the vulnerable, stamping out child sexual exploitation, and he pointed to dozens of ongoing cases related to past abuse right across Greater Manchester involving more than 300 suspects as an example of that. He also said that he accepted the people, the victims they've had to go back to, have been angry, very angry when officers have gone to their front door, that it's taken so long to do anything. But he said he was not here today to defend the past actions of the force, past actions of officers. GMP have voluntarily referred themselves to the police watchdog to look into all of that.
Rob, thank you. Well, now we're joined by the man in charge of the Crown Prosecution Service in the North West from 2011 to 2015, Nazir Afzal. Thank you for joining us. First of all, it's heartbreaking tonight to hear Victoria's grandmother say that she wasn't listened to. What goes through your mind when you hear that?
Yeah. Her experience is the experience of hundreds of victims and families, all of whom were let down. There's no getting away from it. They was an expectation somehow that they should come forward and they should support the prosecution. Well, why should they, when they're not being believed, when they're being told, as the report says, the children should be managing their own behaviour? Was knew that they were being raped and abused by people who knew better.
And this was a child who went into what's called the care system at the age of 8, and that's how we end up letting her be treated. The care system was something I was blind to myself, but when I became aware of it, we all know, for example, that different parts of this country were sending their children to the northwest of England because the care system here was apparently cheaper, and then exposing them to the kind of predators that we've talked about and we're dealing with today. So the care system let them down. Everybody responsible for safeguarding these children let them down. And, you know, I've heard the apology from the Chief Constable. I understand social services have apologised. Everybody needs to apologise, but that's not good enough. The trouble is, an apology,
to prevent there being more victims?
An apology doesn't get you your childhood back, does it? And in one case, this poor girl lost her life.
No. The trauma that they go through at the time and the trauma they live with, this is one of those things. People tell me, why do you deal with stuff from 10, 20 years ago? You deal with it because time is not a healer. This is something that you will have to live with for all of your life, or in some cases, you never get the chance to live your full potential and for your full life. So absolutely, an apology isn't enough. I want to see commitment, I want to see resources, I want to see leadership, I want to see people working together to ensure that these victims who didn't get justice get justice.
Well, obviously we want as many people to come forward as can. They have to have faith in the system, of course. But do you think that this abuse is still going on and still being ignored?
Absolutely. I'm afraid to say there was massive progress after Rochdale and for the first half of this decade, last decade, but resources have gone. Again, people have become complacent. People have suddenly thought it wasn't a problem anymore. They haven't dealt with it in an appropriate way. So to answer your question, there are victims today being raped and abused, children being raped and abused by perpetrators who think they can get away with it, and they need to realise that they cannot get away with it and there are consequences consequences to their actions. And my concern is, sadly, that we are no further forward than we ought to be.
There we have to leave it. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And there is a helpline tonight to call that if you believe that you're a victim of grooming, or maybe you know someone who is a friend or someone in your family. It is a 24-hour line. That number is on the screen for you now. It's 0808 168 9024, and it's also on our website.
More of the day's news now, and a